Welcome everybody. My name is Mike Derby. I'm the founder here at Avalan Wireless, and we're going to be talking today about cryptographic boundaries and cryptographics in general, but more importantly, what is this thing called FIPS140-2? Who cares and why? We're going to talk a little bit about the different levels, testing, how to check for a customer or a vendor's product compliance before you buy it. A little bit about how to do business, and finally how to do business. All right, I've got two bullets there that are the same. Well, let's just jump right in and get into it. So, what is this thing called FIPS140-2, and why is it all of a sudden making a bit, at least a little bit more noise in the market than it used to? And it comes down to this: is that NIST back in, believe it or not, 2005. Issued a particular proclamation that said everybody has to be validated now if a municipality or a government agency wants to buy a product that has a need to transfer sensitive but unclassified data. So that's pretty much anything from credit cards to pretty much anything government related. If it's a police car that's just sending some bio information back and forth, the fingerprint scanners, you name it, if the government's buying it and there's a prerequisite on the cryptographics of that, then it's essential, and it was a requirement in 2005. The only challenge was in 2005 is that there weren't any products yet that met the requirements of it. So although in 2005 this proclamation went out and there was a big buzz for a bit, they also made a very efficient waiver program that went into effect for about 10 years. Now it's 2015, and it's starting to gain a whole lot of attention again because government buyers now are at risk of fines for procuring equipment that is not compliant to the 10-year-old proclamation. And from my understanding, about 10 more years will actually requirements, but more on that as that information rolls out from NIST. But so you've got this government organization called NIST, and they're the ones that actually provide all of the background and documentation, if you will, about how to get validated, how to get your certificate if you're a manufacturer, and what are the requirements for each of the different kinds of levels, if you will, that the different buyer types want to get into. Now, NIST is not the same thing as NSA, or National Security Administration, which does all the military stuff, but they are related. And the NIST's specifications for the ciphers, or the different kinds of AES cryptographic ciphers that are used, those are actually the same ones that NSA calls out in their Suite B, or their DoD secret and below communication mechanisms. So these are the same exact algorithms that the military uses. Top secret and above, who knows, they don't disclose publicly what those are, but secret and below, they are manufacture open information that's on the internet, because the ciphers are hardened enough that they're no known mechanism for cracking them. We've all heard AES is solid, and therefore even the military uses it. But here was the rationale on NIST's own webpage. If you click on this, it'll say this was the reason. As it said, every IT product on the market claims that it does encryption and security, and the government agencies need to have a level of assurance that the stated claims are true, or that they're valid. And I'll be honest with you, AES can stand for all sorts of things, like Avalan encryption system, or Alibaba, or anything you want AES to stand for. You can claim it, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's been validated for doing it. And the government buyers are supposed to look for a specific logo, kind of like that Bluetooth logo or that Wi-Fi logo. There's actually a NIST approved logo. If you look at our products, and Courtney maybe I can bring up a website with our product on it that actually shows the logo itself that's on an approved product, and you have to be licensed, if you will, like the Bluetooth SIG requires a legal license to use their logo. much like NIST does as well. So let me show you. Here's what it would look like. I'll just throw our certificate up on the screen, and assuming the internet's quick, there it is. So this is actually our certificate that we have here at Avalan. And the logo in the middle is exactly what must be on every FIPS validated product that we sell, because down here at the bottom is the signatures, and if you go to the actual NIST website and you look up Avalan, which should be on here right there, you'd see that I'm the responsible party of record, that if for some reason we sell something that's non-compliant, they're coming after me, which is a little scary and all. But we've been doing this for a while. 2010 is when we got our certificate, and there's currently a bazillion. I don't even know how many there are. How you scroll all the way to the top. There's a couple of thousand of them now, maybe 2,500. You can see this list is just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So there's a lot of different products that are out there that date back all the way into the 90s, and they're up to certificate number 2406. Which was issued just a few days ago. So that's kind of where that, what it is that you're looking for, and how to detect if somebody's actually gone through the process and their gear really is what they claim it to be. Now this all has obvious reasons for everyone's security, especially for private information, any sort of fingerprint stuff, all those pictures that they could send back and forth from a police card to validate that your license is good, social security numbers, all these things are sensitive but not classified information. All right, so let's talk about, if you're out there looking for gear, there actually are different specs that you may run across that are part of the requirement. Quite often, if it's a government buyer, they just have a checkbox that may just say something like FIPS validated, and it's a checkbox. That might be all it takes. Now, FIPS validated is kind of a really vague checkbox, because there's a few different things that are implied by FIPS validated. There's actually something that, well, I'll hit that in my next slide. But here's the different things that might be required if it's a well-written, meagerly well-written spec. And they should call out whether or not it's FIPS140-2, and there's these 4 levels. So it'll say 140-2 level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. It's not 140-4. Okay, so software. If you look on the list, you'll find that there's lots of different softwares that you can buy, but it's challenging because the software is only going to give you a certain amount of assurance. It says, well, the software is good, but what about the cryptographic boundary? How do I know that that software, and it's usually something, what do you call it, like a plug-in or a Java intermediary applet. Those are really, really tricky to actually convince a customer that they're valuable. All you really have done is tell them that that you wrote your software more or less correctly, and the government validated it, and they looked at your source code and they agreed. But any time you change even the slightest bit in your source code, you're running it through a very long and expensive process to get it recertified. So level 1, kind of good, but I don't feel all that great about my credit card stuff going over a software implementation. I much prefer a tamper-evident mechanism. So there's this tamper-evident, and that's kind of what we like to go with our modules that we use. So a tamper-evident mechanism means that the product itself should actually have a sticker. It should have some sort of way that that in fact it's proof that you can actually tell. You can detect with your eyes whether or not the widget has been tampered with. Normally it will be, like I said, some sort of sealing sticker. We use like a plastic overmold is what it looks like. It's actually like this epoxy goo all over it that's hardened. And upon inspection on, let's call it a monthly basis, which is usually part of the government buyer's spec, is they're actually supposed to go out and inspect for tamper, the widget itself, and that shows that somebody's tried to forcibly gain access to where the keys, where their encryption keys are stored at on the little chips on the board. And that really starts to get quite useful. Now the challenge, though, with tamper evident, and again, we only go to level 2 here at Avalan. We want to get to level 3. Level 3 is hard to get, and what you have to do now is you have to have the product actually respond. It's detected that it's been tampered with, and it blows itself up, more or less. It blows out the silicon portion on the chip where the keys are stored at so that it can't be any sort of probed, or any sort of manipulations are practical that somebody could go in and actually hack the device and extract them, and it has to respond on its own. It can't just wait for somebody a month later to stop by and actually look, oh, look, there's somebody that's been scratching at it. It has to respond basically instantly on a response trigger. And that's a very sophisticated hardware requirement to get past. To get a level 3 is a bear. And there's very few level 4s out there, because now it actually, not only if it detects tampering and it responds to it instantly, it also has to communicate back to the person who owns the product that it's been tampered with. And that's really hard to figure out how to do. That's typically done with explosive shell of some sort that can give an acoustic response triggered by a tamper mechanism. Now, what if nobody hears it? I don't know, but there's no meaning. It's really hard, really hard to do a level 4, and nobody requires them until you get into the NSA, and the NSA will buy often products that initially are FIPS validated 140-2 because they know they've already gone through a sophisticated testing program, and now they're willing to bring them into the even more aggressive NSA testing programs that they use for higher sophisticated encryption. Level 2 guys like ourselves aren't going to get invited to that game, but level 3 and level 4 is just too incredibly expensive to go after without a really large budget. So what does this all cost, and how long is it going to take if you're a manufacturer? If like ourselves, it took us about $140,000 as how we added it up to get just a basic 140-2 level 2 tamper-evident product through NIST, and it's a module that we did, and it was quite an undertaking, and it took us about 18 months from start to finish to get through that process. The higher the level, expect the longer it's going to take to not just take it, and this is assuming you have an existing implementation and you need to go through specific steps, and like I said, the money scales. And who is it that's taking the money? The money is actually, it has to be like there a limited number of approved labs that the government has said have the authority to create a test report that they're willing to review. Now, NIST actually is the one that gets the final checkbox whether or not they want to accept the report, but they will only even look at reports from a small number of approved testing labs that can pretty much charge anything they feel like, because there aren't many of them and they're really backed up. So, yeah, getting on the calendar of some of the labs is hard, and just big dollars, whatever they feel like charging. Luckily, in 2010, it was probably a little less expensive than it is now. But the steps they run you through as manufacturers, they're going to make sure that all of the algorithmic ciphers that you've actually put in your product have to actually initially go through an even preliminary process with NIST called FIPS197. All that is they're checking to make sure your cipher works before they even start looking at software or hardware. You've got to have your FIPS197 certs in place on every one of because there's numerous different algorithms under the AES family. If you're in this thing, you know what I mean. And you have to have a FIPS197 testing with the lab before you can even start this thing, right? So now you've got those in place. You've written all your code for your product, and now in all your firmware, and now it's time to go in hardware. Now you're going into the test lab, and they're starting to dig through it line by line, literally source code line by line, hardware, scratching at it, pouring acid on it, anything they can do to try and dissolve your epoxy that would simulate a nefarious intent on users. So you're going to send them a bunch of samples. They're going to destroy them all. They'll tell you what's wrong with them, why they're not going to accept them, and then you go back and forth with the lab. Finally, you get through the lab. Then they finally submit the money. It's another several $1,000s to NIST, and they put it in the NIST queue. Well, like a patent, the NIST queue is as fast as they feel like going. Okay, so be patient. It took us 9 months. I hear it's faster now. Before we even got the lab got their first NIST response. It took us 9 months just to get a response. Once that happened, we went through 234, 234, 234 really a lot faster because we did ours all in assembly code, and it was a very straightforward module. The fancier the product, the harder it gets, and you can't change anything in your code ever after once this program gets going. So if your product evolves in any way, forget it. Your product is absolutely fixed and locked at the hardware, at the code, at connectors, at headers, at the metal box the thing is in. If they had, yeah, it can't change, and you don't want to change, otherwise you're starting all over again at the top. So now you zip through that a few times, and hallelujah, you're finally through. NIST finally says you're good to go, and now you just have to wait for their approval to use their logo. And you can put that logo very proudly on everything that you sell and be delighted that you got through it all. All right, so what if I actually just want to check out a vendor and make sure that they're legit? They maybe have a logo on there, and they're telling me it's validated. A lot of folks will say that it's FIPS140-2, and unless it says it's validated, they give you a validation number, and it has the sticker on there. They better, if it has the sticker on there and they aren't validated, report them, because that's very bad. The government frowns on that. But what you want to do is you want to actually look it up, and they will probably give you their cert number. And just like that page I showed you a second ago, the cert number should be on their cut sheet, and it should also be located underneath their logo. And their cert number, you just look up here, and it says cert 1472. You go cert 1472. There's Avalan for real. Oop, that's their. Come on, we're down here someplace. Ah, crud. There we go. Oh, 14. What did I type in? Typed in the wrong number. 1452. There we are. On our product, we probably list 1452. We've got a number of other vendors that we actually sell our hardware to, and they're able to use our certificate and our number, kind of like an FCC ID on a product. You can use a manufacturer's FCC ID if they actually want to. They can download the hardware spec that describes, there's the epoxy on it, cryptographic boundaries are described, everything, and this is all public information, you know, about exactly what it does. Lots and lots of disclosures are required publicly, but you know, there you go. Those are the things required, you know, the kind of documentation along a tamper-evident approval, but make sure you check. It's absolutely critical. If you're buying gear, or you're thinking about buying gear from a vendor, or you're thinking about bidding on a project with a government with specific gear, make sure it's really legitimately validated, and just ask a question, what's the validation number? If they don't know, stop. And don't allow yourself to sell gear on a government bid and then lose out on it because the vendor said that they were FIPS 194 compliant. Oh, I love that. They're compliant is one of my favorite. Well, if you're compliant, how about you write down your validation number? Because the correct verbiage is you're validated, and here's my certificate number. We're certified, okay, but we're not just compliant. You got to dig deeper because it's really important. If they get caught, it can be expensive, very expensive. All right, so the rest of the slides I knew I'd have to go pretty quick on, and I wanted to leave time for, so I actually wanted to just kind of jump to the back, because we've already talked a little bit about doing business with FIPS products in general. If in fact there's anyone on the phone that's looking at buying modular sub-assemblies or designing a product into the FIPS program rather than just buying finished product and selling it to the government, if the intent is to actually design a product that's compliant. I've given a whole bunch of information, but let me just give you one additional high-value piece here, and it's this modules versus complete certifications. Now, there's folks out there that I think make a lot of mistakes in this area, and this is probably the best piece of advice I can give if you're even a competitive manufacturer. If you look on here, here's the list. you'll see there's companies like, HP. Let's see if they go under Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard, they are my favorite because they print, they have 595 certs. Okay, I kid you not. And the amount of money they must spend is just astronomical on all their switch gear and all their government gear they sell. Cisco, again, 692. Now, that doesn't mean they have that many certs, I'm sorry. That's just how many times their name shows up. But look at them all on the right-hand column. Okay, what you don't want to do is bring a piece of equipment through the validation program where the cryptographic boundary is really complex. Let's say you go with the whole thing. You say the whole product's exterior, the metal box, is my protective cryptographic boundary. Okay, then. So now anytime you change a mechanical connector, you're screwed. Anytime you change, if you want to change any sort of firmware, software, code, anything, if you find a bug in the code later, can't fix it unless you go through the program again. It's that egregious if you're changing stuff on a cryptographic boundary being the entire product. And you can see right here, these are all the routers that they took through. Besides that, it's incredibly expensive to do a code review on I can't even begin to imagine how many hundreds of thousands of lines of code there are that are running inside of this thing. Line by line, they're going to go through it in order to try to find any sort of entry points or weaknesses that would allow a hacker to gain access to its cryptographic features. Don't go there unless you just want a lot of pain. You want to go about this the easy way. You find a vendor who has a module, kind of like our cute little module, and what you do is you embed a validated module into your end product. You just take somebody who's gone through the pain, you take their widget, you don't change anything in its cryptographic boundary, and in the case of our module, you really can't. It's epoxy coated. You place it on your board, and you can put the sticker of the manufacturer, like us, on your outside of your product. You can change your product all you like. Anything you want to do to it. You really don't care as long as on your data path you run it through the module first. Okay, that means all your encryption is within that boundary. You're compliant. So even if you're a manufacturer and you want to compete, I guess, that's the smart way of doing it. You'll see the really good companies on here, and there's only a couple of us do it that way because I don't know why Cisco doesn't do it that way. But frankly, if they had the same, let's say, PCI bus, high-speed crypto subassembly, and they could just pop it in and out of any product they felt like, they would save so much money. And that was the advice we got from our lab when we first started the process, because we had a relationship and they gave us excellent advice. And I'm passing along that advice to anyone that's looking to develop products, including using our module, because we designed it to fit that model, including all the way through to somebody that's buying finished product and bidding them into the government. And that's kind of the full storyline of what FIPS is, why it's important, who buys the stuff even, and I guess a little bit forward-looking where it's going from here. You may hear something about FIPS140-3. It's not out yet. Even when it comes out, it'll be years before it has any sort of relevance, truly relevance in the market. You may hear different. Don't buy it. It's years away. Just like 140-2 was mandated but had a huge waiver program in 2005, and it's only 10 years later. Only 10 years later, you finally hear about any sort of penalties or fines. 140.3, when it comes out, it'll have lots of hoopla. Everybody like, oh, I got to have it. It's mandated. Yeah, there won't be any companies that are validated on it. You see the list? Until you get on the list, you're not 140-3, so there'll be a waiver program that you can still buy 140-2 for the next 10 years. Okay, you get it. It's just market noise, and just ignore it and just go with the reality of what how the world kind of works in this space. Okay, that all being said, I'd love to take any questions that are out there and see if I can't resolve any curiosities about products in this space.
Nick?
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I just need a kind of read up on that website a little bit more before I have additional questions in terms of the products, the specific inventory of products that you provide. But this is good information. It was a very informative webinar you just presented. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you hopping on today. I'm not sure who was speaking there, but yeah, if there's any follow-on questions you have, we're always, like it says here, we're always eager to answer questions and earn your trust. That's how we end up hopefully doing business in the future, and if not, then at least we were able to help and and make sure that good decisions are being made out there as far as vendor selections and product development efforts. Well, good stuff, everybody. Again, appreciate your time. Give us a call. And again, my name is Mike Derby. I'm available. You probably get filtered through the sales guys first. The webinar will be posted online here shortly. And let's talk in the future, I hope. Have a great day.